Kindly give him a big round of applause. Rajneesh sir. Before I hand over the summit session to our moderator, sir, I would like all our panelists today to introduce themselves. So, can we start from there, sir?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michael Dingle. I work in a company called Airjaldi. We design, build, and operate wireless networks in rural areas in India, and we operate in 5 states.
Hi, my name is Ravina Agarwal, and I'm the Program Officer for Media Rights and Access at the Ford Foundation.
Hi, I'm Shahid Ahmed, working with the Digital Empowerment Foundations, and I'm looking after the project of the wireless for the community in 5-6 states. Thank you.
I'm Major Vibhas from Aura Ventures, and we've been providing the last mile solutions to the RailTel Corporation of India and other ISPAs across the country. And we believe that the last mile monetization and the last mile cost of the infrastructure is one of the basic bottlenecks for development of broadband and penetration. Thanks.
My name is Mahesh Uppal. I am a consultant specializing in telecom regulatory affairs.
My name is Rajan Matthews, and I serve as the Director General of the Cellular Operators Association of India.
Yes. Oh, I have to? Yeah, I'm Rajat Kathuria from the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations.
I'm Dharan from Airjaldi.
I'm Alok Gupta from Airjaldi. Michael has already described what we do. We try and reach to the unreached in terms of providing them connectivity.
I'm Arjun Sen from DEF. I'm a consultant. I look after communication and publishing all.
How about this side of the room?
Okay. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. As you heard, unfortunately, a few people could not make it, but nevertheless, we'll soldier on. We've had this wireless summit a couple of times now, and what I didn't want to do is repeat what we've done in previous years. So, instead of flogging the horse many times, let's find a new horse to flog. So I'm glad that we've got some new speakers this time around. To my left here, so it's great seeing Mahesh after a long time, as well as Rajan. So what I'd like to do first is, when we did this summit last year, we had a set of outcomes from that event that were quite interesting in what they ended up with. I'm not sure if everyone here has actually read through those or not. So what I'll get is my colleague Noel to just read out a few of those outcomes, takeaways, suggestions, recommendations that we had last year, so that becomes a starting point instead of when I was repeating that all over again. So Noah, could we have the readout?
Good afternoon, everyone. So the recommendations are actually published in this wonderful book, which we just received today as well. It's fresh out of the printing press. It's the second casebook that we have. The first one was published last year, and we have the second one. I think this was introduced in the first session earlier. So I'm going to read out. We have a lot of recommendations, but I'm going to read out the first 5. And the first is that it is vital for policymakers to understand that technology and digital literacy can easily permeate rural areas. Such resources can play a key role not only in strengthening the democratic governance process and delivery of government services, but also in enabling citizens to improve their livelihood, obtain social benefits, and avail of better healthcare, education, and skills development. The second one is, there is a great need for a harmonized and time-bound regulatory approval process for providing last-mile connectivity, particularly in rural areas. This can be integrated with an appropriate policy and licensing mechanism for rural ISPs similar to the highly successful cable TV retailer model in India, to bring down deployment and access costs, thus making rural broadband services affordable to the target community. The policy framework should also look at business and sustainability models and take into account the importance of knowledge sharing between communities and practitioners. The third recommendation is that one of the strongest, that the Department of Telecom and the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India should look at the various policy aspects of unlicensed spectrum and how other bands could be delicensed to aid in accelerating internet penetration. Both increased teledensity and internet usage are vital for the country's economic development, and spectrum, which has been recognized by the Supreme Court of India as a public resource, should be used as effectively and inclusively as possible to serve the public interest. More spectrum resources should be delicensed and made freely available to civil society organizations with suitable policies to restrict and penalize their misuse and abuse. The fourth recommendation is that it is crucial to introduce rules and regulations that make it mandatory for licensed Class A, B, or C ISPs to share bandwidth with rural ISPs and provide them with back-end connectivity under a revenue-sharing arrangement. Doing so will help to solve issues related to substandard quality of ISP services, the business models for, as well as the implications of licensed and unlicensed spectrum sharing on security and interference should also be considered. This can be the foundation for a policy framework that would make wireless telephony and broadband connectivity commercially viable for different types of players. And the last one is that there is a need to promote rural ISPs as a sustainable social enterprise which can generate strong demand for connectivity at prices that the poor can afford. It is thus necessary to understand all the underlying price factors to create an ecosystem that enables rural ISPs to offer broadband connectivity at the grassroots level.
Okay, thanks, Noel. So I hope you guys got a little bit of that. Now, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to focus on in this session. Now, DAF has given me 3 broad areas of discussion. One is around bandwidth issues, the second is around legal issues, and the third is around infrastructure-based issues. So again, they're quite broad in what they can cover. However, I want to deep dive a little bit more into a few aspects. And the first thing I want to talk about is the last thing that Noel mentioned, is the rural ISP issue. So Michael, can I bring you into the conversation, since you've been doing this for a very long time, and I think you've had some interesting experiences and challenges as well. So what I think I would like to hear from you is there a need for rural ISP license? Last year we seemed to say that yes, there is a need for that class of licensing. And I guess it would be interesting to hear from you, what could you do with a license like that? What impact could you have on the ground?
And what that will do to contribute. And I'm starting my response with that because I think that when we're talking about rural provisioning, there's a plethora of issues that need to be addressed when one runs such an operation. Many of them are challenging. Legal is one of them. So maybe we can touch upon those later on. But specifically to the question. The answer, first and foremost, is yes, there is a need for such a license. In a nutshell, these categories were just mentioned. In India, theoretically speaking, there were 3 categories for an ISP operator. Class A was a telecom circle, Class B was a state, and Class A was all over India. Class C was cancelled due to a false move. We won't go there at the moment. Class B and A are theoretically possible, available, but they are very expensive. Just to give you an idea, for getting a Class A license in India, you need to pay a 20 lakh one-time payment. You need to put a surety deposit of 2 crores, and then you need to pay 5 to 6% of your adjusted gross revenue. Don't ask me what that is, but we can talk about it, to the authorities. And this is not even going into how difficult it is to get the license. You need to go through 6 different agencies, what have you. Now, let's assume that there was a rural license that is not one of these, and it would be provided at cost X or Y. What would it do?
Right now we have in India I don't know if one of the last remnants, but definitely a remnant of the license Raj. Those of you who precede 1990, the color of my hair tells you that I do, would know that, this is a big issue. What is a license Raj? I hold a license and that's what I have. Right now we have a whole bunch of players in India within the ISP space whose greatest asset is the fact that they have a license that they've obtained at a certain point in time. They exercise an arbitrage. In other words, they allow others to ride on this license and they sell the bandwidth that they get for a certain cost. So if we have a license for rural areas, we do away with this to start with. Why would that be good? It won't be good for the large ISPs. It would be good for the smaller ISPs because it will allow them to operate at lower costs, lower bandwidth costs. And it will obviously trickle down or ooze up or spray the clients in the rural areas with higher bandwidth. I'll just round it up, Raj, by saying that, the counter-argument that you hear is that this will get out of control. You'll have, in a country of 1 billion people, you'll have 1 million ISPs, and these million ISPs will spin out of control in terms of quality of service and in terms of the state's ability to monitor them. To these two things, I say that in India, we have commercial vehicles. Those of you from India know those yellow plates that run every day on the roads. Some of them are crazy drivers, some of them are good drivers. They all have to adhere to a commercial license and to the rules of the country, and they are all monitored. We're talking about an infrastructure that by its very nature, because it's an IP network, could be controlled. So I believe that the impetus is great, the obstacles are not, and it'll be a great benefit.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So speaking of 1 million licenses, Mahesh, could I put you on the spot? So if we had 1 million ISP licenses in the country, is that good or bad?
I think it's not at all a bad idea, and my own feeling is that, and the point that Michael also made is perfectly right. The real concern that the authorities, quote unquote, have had is what would happen if 1 million ISPs just ran amok and started doing all kinds of things which, for some reason or the other, would not be acceptable, let's say socially or politically or whatever. But recall that almost all ISPs use the infrastructure of the bigger players, and bigger players are subject to all the security and defense and whatever regulations that are in place. They're already subject to it. They're subject to monitoring. They're subject to security clearances. So I don't believe that the risk that is frequently touted as a big risk is actually a really big risk. I think there is every reason why we should have a fully liberalized last mile market. And there are clearly challenges to doing that, and one of them, of course, is the whole unbundling of the loop that we've been talking about. The fact that there is physical infrastructure in place, and which, as we all know, is the most difficult part of networks. That's already in place, which is not optimally used and not shared for a variety of reasons. And I think once that was to happen and was actually aggressively promoted, I do believe we will have the environment where we would have a very liberal and a very competitive last mile market, and which could, I hope, serve everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Mahesh, for that. So this last mile thing keeps on rearing its ugly head every so often. I mean, and I've been hearing about this pretty much ever since I became a telecom engineer some 20-something years ago. Why is the last mile still an issue? Is it a technology issue?
Vibhas, and I'll take cue from where Mr. Uppal left. I think so. Last mile is one of the biggest issues as of now, and it's not only the last mile. Michael will agree. It's also the cost of the last mile, at what it's delivered. The biggest challenge, if we start from a village level, is that what is the village level entrepreneur going to invest to deliver the last mile to one of his customers? And that as of now is a range of 6 to 8,000 rupees. You could correct me, but this is the general range, and I think so. The TRAI has come out with a document paper that should be FTTX, should be fiber to the curb, should be Wi-Fi. My biggest worry is that we're saying that we should have a rural ISP license, but we should not forget that there's a new breed of technology which is LTE, which is going to come in and it's going to set footprint in the whole country. There's a deliberation going on that in the rural we should have 700 megahertz to do it. So the reason is that I think so the cost of technology per home need to be somewhere close to what the mobile technology is. And second is that where is this rural customer going to consume bandwidth? Is it going to be a laptop, a phablet, or it's going to be a mobile handset? Probably it's a mobile handset. So coming back to the challenge, I think so one is that we need to identify the right stakeholder who is capable of becoming the last mile rural ISP. As per me, we've been recommending to the TRAI that the cable TV player already is there who's penetrated into the village, and why not have a cable ISP license, because he complies to all the regulations as mandated by the MSO, as well as he's got the customer connect. And what are we talking of as the number of customers, potential customers who are going to consume bandwidth? Probably 5,000 or less. And let's not forget the BBNL initiative which is there, where we are saying that ISP will reach the Gram Panchayat. So in our initiative, we are deliberating with all the stakeholders that one is the ISP A, which is wanting to create the franchisee partners and the channel partners, which our partner in any case, RailTel Corporation, does that. So my mandate is to create the access network partners up to the village level in the whole of Haryana. And we've got about 20 odd partners in the ecosystem with about 20,000 connections. And last year when we started, it was just about 200 odd customers. So I'm seeing that at the last mile, the village level entrepreneur, especially the cable guy, he's working on a revenue of about 90 rupees a month. When you bill for a cable connection, and those who've seen the village, you pay for about 220 rupees for the 250 channels which you get as a bouquet. What lands up in the hand of the village level entrepreneur is just 90 rupees, because the rest of the cuts go to the bigger players. So even if you are able to enable that cable TV ecosystem, and you get an average ARPU of 600 rupees, which is say about 40% share with the VLE, village level entrepreneur, still he makes more than what he is making for a cable TV network. And he is well regulated, he understands the business, and he's got an aspiration to grow. Thanks.